Shout out, folks. I'm Bob the Old Rucker, opening this episode with a ginormous apology to my guest and friend, Tom. Tom recorded this show with Team BS, that's Bob and Shannon, my wife, many months ago, and the Old Rucker, lost his show. Yes, I own it, and yes, I've lost sleep over it. Thankfully, we recovered the show. So here's a quick introduction to the episode. Tom, a Septuagenarian, say that one 5 times as fast as you can, instead of slowing down is speeding up. With over 40 years of sobriety, he's a man of many hats because, as he says, it keeps me sober. From hell to heaven, land to sea, broken to pulpit, Tom's journey took him from an aimless path to a direction of giving his life to service. So, on with the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, shout out from thepit.com. Good morning, afternoon, day. I don't know when you're listening to this show, but we're glad you're listening to it. So we have on the show today, of course, Shannon and I, Team BS, Bob and Shannon. And then we've got a good friend that we just met. I'm going to let him tell his story as we move along. But we talked about this earlier, and unless you tell me otherwise, we're going to call you Tom C.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, Tom, but you're Tom C for the episode.
That's fine.
All right. So we asked Tom to get with us and share his experience, strength, and hope. He's got a pretty interesting background. We chatted last week about some other business in recovery, and during that conversation, I just thought this would be a fun guy to have on the show. So welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
You want to say something, Shannon?
No.
Cute. All right. Well, we'll start off with kind of like the easy ones, soft pitches, I guess. Tom, where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Virginia. I was born in Richmond, Virginia. Actually, I was born on Lee Circle, which is where that big statue of Robert E. Lee that they just took down was.
Great. And you have a sailor background.
Yes, I do. Finished high school in Richmond and went on to college, and I graduated from college in 1970. My draft lottery number was 22, and in 1970, I think they went up to 300 and something, taking people. But my dad had been in the Army in World War II.
I'd like to say hooah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And he had 3 sons, and he told all 3 of us, said, whenever you go in the service, and we knew we were going to go in the service, he said, whenever you go in the service, don't go in the Army, go in the Navy, because you'll eat every meal off the table, and you'll sleep every night in a bed. and except for 3 days where I went through jungle survival training in the Philippines, that's exactly what he was absolutely right. And but
Good.
Yeah, nobody told me that I was going to have to get used to sleeping on the ground or in a tank. I don't know what I expected, but when I met some of the guys first of all, we ate joint endeavors, and we would go, and the Navy would do the chow, or the Air Force would do the chow. It was the best chow ever.
Right.
It made me want to switch services midstream.
I never got a bad meal in the Navy.
Oh.
When we were on ship underway, then we got four square meals a day.
4?
Because we always had mid-rats at night. And it might be some leftovers and stuff, but we'd get full meals. And sometimes if they didn't have enough leftovers, they'd fix something fresh.
Wow.
So you've heard that Dr. Seuss, green eggs and ham?
Yes.
Now, you know that's true, right? Green eggs are true. The Army invented them.
Oh. Well, we didn't get them in the Navy.
Oh, we ate out of it. I think something to do with the chemical reaction with the Mermite cans that they'd bring the eggs out to us in the field.
Right.
Had some kind of reaction, and that's why they always fed us in the dark.
Ah.
Yeah, little tidbit. All right, so you did some Navy. We're going to come back to that. You did some Navy, and then what intrigued me was your volunteer work that you do for outreach, and you're a pastor.
Right.
So you have lived your whole life just doing great things and just being a model citizen for our communities and just shining. Do you have like all kinds of I've been a great guy my whole life. Stuff on your walls, and
Not even close.
did we have a derailment somewhere?
Oh, we do.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. Tell me about your roots.
The derailment started, I guess, about my senior year in high school. When I was old enough to drink 3-2 beer. I think I'd had my first drink that I ever took was at home. My grandmother used to make rice wine, and every once in a while, on a Sunday afternoon or something, we'd get to have a little glass, a little taste of it and stuff. And I can remember those first sips that I would have of it. And I felt so warm and good going down, and I knew I'd always seen in the movies people, the successful businessman or the lead man, he'd come home after a hard day, fix himself a cocktail, and maybe have another one, but they never showed him getting drunk and falling down and having a fight with his wife and all those things.
Right.
But anyway, so I picked it up and I went away to college to the southwestern part of the state because it was 300 miles from home. And I knew I could go there and I could drink the way I wanted to drink, but I didn't have to worry about mom and dad dropping in unannounced. I knew if they were going to drive 300 miles, we didn't have interstate at that time. If they were going to drive 300 miles, they were going to certainly make sure I was going to be there.
Right.
They
had to saddle the horses, right? And they got to stop and feed them along the way.
Oh, yeah.
No, not Virginia, you said.
I'm
right?
not quite that old.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
But anyway, so I went through college and drank, and drinking was fun going through college. I saw a lot of things that I did that were shown in Animal House, but but it really was fun. And you're young and you're healthy, and and keeping my grades up, that was never a problem. If I showed up, I had not a photographic memory, but almost an auditory memory that I'd remember hearing the professor say what he, and so I did well.
Are you an auditory learner?
I learn well auditorily. Yeah, I'm not a good. I read and read and read, but I don't remember as much reading as if I listen.
Awesome.
That's interesting. I am definitely a hands-on. Somebody else put their hands on it for me.
Yeah.
I'm just.
But anyway, so like I said earlier, that my draft number was 22, so there was no question as to whether. And my older brother had already gone into the Navy, and so I wanted to go into the Navy. I did real well in college, and I applied for officer candidate school. But because the Navy was looking for people that came out with math and science degrees or people that had perfect eyesight and could be pilots, I was turned down for officer candidate school initially. And my happy-go-lucky world came crashing down upon me. I had left school a little bit early to see if I could get a job. I had already completed graduation requirements before the last trimester. And the only thing I was supposed to do at that trimester was to do practice teaching. And I said, well, if I'm going to the Navy, I'm not going to be teaching, so I don't need to do this. I didn't need it for my degree. So I left. Well, I didn't realize the school immediately told the selective service that I was available for service. And the next thing I knew, I was down there getting my physical and everything else. And I had this application for OCS that was pending that I hadn't heard anything on or anything else. And so I got classified 1A, and I went back home and I called the draft board and I said, I just got this thing saying I was classified 1A. How long do I have before you're going to call me to active duty? And they said about 4 days.
Oh, boy.
So I dashed back down to the recruiter and I said, what can I do? And he says, well, we have this plan that you can do. Here's what we'll do. Most of the time when you've applied, if you get turned down, you can get picked back up right away. We just turn your application around, and the second time they'll pick it up. That's what they had told me. But they said, if you need to get the draft board off, what we can do is we could take you over to the enlisted recruiter, and they will put you on a delayed entry program. and we can put the entry back, push it off until after your graduation ceremony, because to get my degree, I had to be at the graduation activity. And they said we can put it off to that, and then if you get picked up, then that's fine. You can just go to officer candidate school rather than being in the Navy. But if you don't get picked up, if it doesn't come back as accepting you, then you go to boot camp. And so June the 12th, I found myself in boot camp.
Oh.
Graduation day was at the end of May, and right after the graduation ceremony and stuff like that, my parents and my grandparents had come up from Richmond to Southwest Virginia for the graduation, and my grandmother handed me this letter that said, for one of the following reasons, which we won't tell you which reason. It's about 38 of them in this column. They said, we have been unable to accept your application for officer candidate school at this time, which I'd expected would come. So
you were an enlisted man first.
So then I found myself being enlisted.
How long were you enlisted?
Almost 3 full years.
Good. I mean, that's good, because when you did become an officer, you certainly had an understanding of what your young enlisted folks were going through.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. In the Navy, we call it a Mustang, but Mustangs normally go further.
E6, E7.
Yeah. And, but I got caught in this catch-22 thing. And it really crushed me, that I didn't. Because when I left after graduation, I had one accepted, and I went back and I told to the recruiter, and I said, can you send this thing forward now? I can go, I don't mind going to boot camp, but can you send this thing forward? And he said, no. He said, now you're in the Navy. He said, we could immediately turn your application around while you were a civilian. But once you got sworn in and you became Navy, now we have to follow Navy regs. Navy regs say you have to wait 6 months. I said, okay. I was crushed, and all this time, as each one of the hits came, and I'll go through some of the hits, but each one of the hits came, alcohol became more of a medicinal thing, more of just get me through this, just get me to the next point, So I went off to I scored real high on the ASVAB test. As a matter of fact, and I've never pursued it, but I found out later that the score that I got on the ASVAB test was high enough that I could have qualified for Mensa.
For what?
For Mensa.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't pay much attention to it because I said I wouldn't have anything in common with those guys.
Oh.
They're not fun to hang around with. I wanted to hang around with the drunks in the bar.
Right.
They're my fun guys.
I actually know a couple of Mensa members, and they're both interesting fellows.
They are.
They're for a conversation for another cup of coffee for another day.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what happened?
But anyway, so I go off to boot camp, and it was a culture shock to the immense. Here I was in college, university, coming out of a middle class family where it was just really a close family, and you watched your P's and Q's, you minded your manners, and so on. And here I was in the Navy, every other word started with F, and every third word started with M.
So just a real quick catch up. Your parents, you had 2 brothers. There's 3 boys.
3 boys.
And all of you went in the Navy, or?
No, 2 of us went in the Navy. My younger brother, who was 8 years younger than me, decided he didn't want anything to do with. He went to Virginia Tech to play in the band, and to play in the band, the marching band, you had to be in the height of in the cadet corps. And he went through, and that first year, there was a lot of hazing and stuff like that went on back at that time. Anyway, and so with all the hazing and everything else, my father would never let us quit anything. If you signed up for it and you started with it, you weren't going to quit.
Right. Good dad.
So he stuck it out for a year, and then he said, "I'm not going to do it for another year." So he went to, and then he decided he didn't want anything to do with the military, and he went to work for the State Department. So he did a illustrious career with the State Department.
Wow.
All right. So meanwhile, you're drinking in the Navy, going through some hiccups.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm doing whatever I can to get through it. And like I said, but I went through boot camp and did real well in boot camp. I was a company honor man and stuff like that. But the hurts come like when they came through our company, and anybody that had a college degree, they went to them and asked them if they wanted to go to officer candidate school, except me. And I said, the company honor man, what's the matter with me? And they said, you have to wait 6 months. Your 6 months aren't up. You know, the boot camp was only like 12 weeks or something.
Oh.
So I said, okay. So got my orders to go to Class A school, which was to become a communications technician and stuff. And that was a 6-month course. You know, so the first 10 weeks of that, or it was a 20-week course, the first 10 weeks of that program, every day we would listen to Morse code.
Wow.
Hour after hour after hour. And we started off in what they called the big room, and they had this huge lit up keyboard up on the wall in the front of the classroom, and you'd hear "da."
Oh no.
And the A would light up, and you'd hit the A on one of these old 1920s Underwood typewriters with your little finger, and then you check your little finger to make sure it wasn't broken. But we'd go and each time, so we learned the Morse code, and you'd start off at real slow, and then we got to move at our own pace, and so on. But we had to get so we were I think we had to do letters at like 13 words a minute. And
oh, that sounds so exciting.
Oh, it was. 1 hour a day, we'd get a lesson on something about the Navy, you know, or something about electronics or something like that. But anyway, so we teamed up with some guys, and we figured that we found out that if we finished in the top 5 of the class at the 10-week point, and we had reached all the targets that we needed to for the speed for copy and code, then we got our choice as to whether we would go to our branch, which they're the guys that would continue to copy code, or T branch, which it was a technical branch, and we wouldn't have to sit there with those typewriters anymore. We just had to be able to write it down with a pencil, and we only had to do the 13 characters per minute that we had, or 13 words per minute that we would do originally. So we did that, and then when we got over to that thing, we found out if we were in the top 5 of our class, we got our choice of duty station. So we made sure that all 5 of us, well, there were 4 of us that got together, we were all in the top 5 of our class, and we all got our the duty station.
Hawaii?
Oh, I didn't want to go to Hawaii.
You didn't want to go to Hawaii? Where'd you go?
Not then. I went to Morocco. That's when I went to Morocco. Oh, that's
when you went to Morocco. Okay, so you're about 22 years old, right? 22. You finished college. What was your degree? Education?
I majored in Spanish, and I minored in physical education and education, the 2 double minor.
What in the world made you want to major in Spanish?
It was easy.
It came easy. Honest.
It came easy. I had 5 years. I just had this, I don't know, ability. You know, sometimes you just have a gift with foreign languages, and I had this ability with foreign languages. So in high school, I had 5 years of Spanish, 2 years of Latin, and when I took all the tests and stuff like that, and they told me I was going to be a CT, they said, and we're going to send you to language school, because I scored almost perfect on the foreign language thing. And I thought I was going to go I was excited about it, because my original dummy orders coming out of boot camp were to send me to California to the Navy postgraduate school, where they have the Navy foreign language school. And you know, I'd gone through the interviews, you know, when they were asking about, you know, for interviewing you for the security clearances and stuff like that. And they asked me, I said, would you be willing to learn Vietnamese And I said, yeah. They said, would you be willing to learn Chinese? And I said, yeah. They said, would you be willing to learn Russian? And I said, yes. And they said, good, and so on. And I got my dummy orders, but then when the final orders came through, it sent me down to R&T branch school rather than going to the language school. And it's just, I was starting to learn more about the needs of the Navy. They needed more R&T branchers at that time than they needed I guess it was language. I'm trying to think. There was like 5 or 6 different branches of communications technician. And I think I don't know if we called them L branchers or what it was. But anyway, when I got overseas, maybe it's O branch. And anyway, when I got overseas to Morocco, I met a guy that was in there doing the language stuff, and he was in the French area. And I asked him, I said,
Morocco.
Yeah. And I asked him, I said, did you take French in high school? He goes, no, not at all. He'd never had the language before. And I thought, man, I got a degree in Spanish. and it's a real high score on this, but they just didn't need it. Anyway.
So is it Monterey, California is where the defense language school is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's
it's the Navy postgraduate school is where it is.
So do all the services go through that? Well, you wouldn't know. You didn't go through it yourself, right?
No, I didn't.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine.
I got close.
Going from, willing to learn a language to that would just, did you have therapy through that?
I got, no, no, but I thought I needed it.
Oh my goodness.
I woke up one night, we had these barracks, and we'd have, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 people in one barrack thing, one big room.
Yeah, yeah.
And stuff like that. I woke up one night and I'm hearing, and I'm going, holy smokes, I'm going crazy.
Oh.
And I look over in the corner and there's a guy over there and he's practicing.
You're kidding me. No. Oh, he was dedicated.
He was trying to catch up.
About what year was this?
Oh, gee. I went in 1970. I was in, it was from September to about February of 1971.
So did you have a love of your life at this time, or were you still just a Navy go-getter type of guy?
No, I had a love of my life that when I was in boot camp, I got what I called a Dear John letter.
Oh no!
And so I thought I'd be funny, and I wrote back to her, and I said, I know you really didn't mean that, so I'm just going to ignore that. The next letter said, I don't like to be ignored.
Wow. Did you keep that one? That sounds like a fun one to keep.
No. So not at that time. I didn't keep it.
But you didn't actually end up with her.
No.
No. Okay. So 1974, you're in Morocco.
Right.
Gosh, you didn't find the love of your life in Morocco?
No.
A resounding no.
No.
So when did you finally get to receive your commission?
When I, about 2 months before I was due to transfer out of Morocco, and they called me into the captain's office and told me that I had been accepted to officer candidate school, and he says, I can get you out of here in about a week. And I went, oh, thank you.
Really?
Yeah. I was so glad to get away from there.
Gosh, you're right on the Mediterranean, aren't you?
Oh, no. Yeah, you're also right by the Sahara. And
that's right.
And I don't know if you've ever heard any of those guttural languages that they speak over there and stuff. It sounds like they're shouting at each other. Everybody's mad at each other. Everything's so dirty.
Oh.
And it was awful. It was fun for about the first 30 days. It was fun. But then after that,
that's what they say about Hawaii too.
We woke up one morning because we had these long 1-story barracks that had we didn't have air conditioning. Yeah, we didn't. We had I guess a rec room in the center between, and so you'd have one watch group at one end and another watch group at the other end, and there were several of those barracks. We didn't have over there at that time. Senator Fulbright from here was in the Senate saying we have no military presence in Morocco. and we're, well, who are we? You know, and then it was just crazy. We had.
That's because you don't have air conditioning. Now, had you had air conditioning, he would have said we have military presence.
He might have. Right. We might have. Well, didn't have air conditioning because they would let the Moroccan leadership, the towns, the Caliph and stuff like that they gave them privileges to shop in our exchange, and so when the air conditioners would come in, they had first pick, and they buy all of them.
Oh my goodness!
But what was bad was that I couldn't live off the base either, because I was only an E3 at the time when I first went over there, and it was a mess. It was. That's what I said. There were so many hits that came that I just really felt bad because you couldn't get away from it. And on the base itself, we couldn't go on Liberty in the same town that the base was, because there was a Russian paper mill across the street from the base, and you could see the wires that went up the side of the smokestacks from the paper mill and so on. And they didn't want, and everything that we were dealing with was classified. Yeah. And so we couldn't go on Liberty in the base. We had to take the gray Navy short bus and go about, I don't know, I guess it was about 20 miles to get to Kenitra, or in World War II, it was Port Leote, if you have some people that are old enough that would understand that. But anyway, we could go down there. And
Shannon and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
We wouldn't remember Leote. So let me see if I can catch up with you here. You went through college, dabbled in drinking. You're in the Navy now for 3 years, dabbling in drinking, but nothing significant's happened, and you get picked up to be an officer.
Yeah. Well, you say dabble. I don't know. My every thought, if I wasn't on duty, I was too afraid. I was too afraid to not be successful in the military, because I thought if I got kicked out of the military, that would ruin my entire life forever, and I could never recover from that. Then I got a security clearance, and I was even more afraid to lose my security clearance, because I thought then that would really hurt me.
So you had a little motivation.
So I had this motivation to make sure that I was at the right place at the right time when I was supposed to be there. And I learned that, or at least I thought I learned. I didn't think of myself as an alcoholic at the time, but I knew I drank every opportunity I got.
Sure.
I mean, I drank more than I had money for. I'd borrow money each payday so I could drink to the next payday, but I'd have to borrow money to get to there, and then I'd pay it back, and just keep that source going.
Cycle.
Yeah, and it was, and I should have seen and should have realized, but I didn't. And but later on, when I finally did come to the realization I was an alcoholic, I thought I had heard lots of the senior officers talk about if somebody had a problem with alcohol, that it was a disciplinary problem, that they didn't have any self-discipline and stuff like that. But when I look back on it, alcoholics have more self-discipline than most other people do, because we will get up and we will go to work and we will do whatever we have to do to protect that source to be able to drink.
Good
At
point.
times when we feel, if any non-drinker felt the way that we did when we went to work, they would call in sick without thinking about it, but never.
So, Tom, you got your commission, and instead of just doing 6-8 years like a lot of folks do in the military, you stayed a little longer?
Well, see, I was on a 4-year enlistment, and I got picked up, and I still had about a year or so to go on that 4-year enlistment. What they do is they discharge you from one, and you pick up another one. And then there's not with officers, once you get commissioned, then it's not, you get a tour of duty that you get sent to, and if you keep accepting other tour, if you want to get out, then you're writing your ass to be released from active duty.
Right.
So it's not like an enlistment of a specific amount of time. But I left Morocco and I went to Newport, Rhode Island, for officer candidate school.
Okay.
And that was kind of fun because I already knew what a lot of people that weren't in the Navy, before, were because at officer candidate school, they pick up kids from college, what I tried to get into right out of college,
Right.
and stuff. So I wasn't a newbie. So I knew a lot of stuff and felt very comfortable with a lot of stuff and so on.
You already knew how to salute.
Right. And I was getting paid. I was getting paid as an E5 by that time,
Right.
as an officer candidate. So it was a big, and I had more liberty at officer candidate school than I had ever had in the Navy.
So now that you had a little extra money, what was your drink of choice? It wasn't Meisterbrow, I'm sure. What was?
No, it's still beer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You were a beer drinker. I kind of looked at you maybe as a Scotch or bourbon type of guy.
Well, no, later on, I like bourbon. I used to drink Virginia Gentleman.
Got a high taste there.
Yeah, but but I didn't handle it all that well.
Uh-huh.
So I could handle beer more, and beer was cheaper, and so I'm Scottish.
Oh, okay, all right. So when did go ahead, Shan?
Oh, I was just going to ask a question because, when you're talking about college felt like Animal House for everybody that remembers that. In the military, I think about watching movies, World War II movies, where they always get in bar fights, got to run away from the police or something like that. I mean, you're kind of in a culture that promotes drinking in both of those situations, or where it's acceptable, expected. It's just kind of what's going on. How do you know whenever, if everybody you're around is doing the same thing, how do you know whenever you're not just like everybody else?
When somebody tells you that.
Okay.
I don't know. I said I made it through officer candidate school, but there were times when so many times I should have recognized that I had a problem with alcohol.
Are you still single during this time?
Yeah.
And you're making all that money?
Yeah.
Golly, bring the beer.
Yeah. But I hear reveille go in the morning, and I open my eyes. I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot behind the wheel, and I'm going, oh no. So I quickly dash in and get changed real quick and get back out for formation. And fortunately, I was a real good swimmer, and so I was the regimental swimming instructor at OCS, and so I just had to go to the pool, and I didn't have to go through some of the other stuff, and so on. But I mean, that was one of the times when I just, I don't know. I should have recognized it.
Did anybody ever say to you, Tom, wow, that's a lot of beer or bourbon, or did anybody ever make you aware that maybe you were tipping a little bit more than you should have?
No, because most of the people, like on the weekends when we'd have Liberty and stuff like that, most of the guys
drank like you did.
Yeah.
They'd
party. They were college guys. We used to frat guys, and used to fraternity parties and cake parties and things like that and stuff. And I can remember, taking off with several of them that were from up in that area. And we went to cake parties at different colleges, on the weekends,
So life was good.
Yeah, life was good. Life was real good.
I mean, you might wake up behind the steering wheel, get cleaned up, and head to the pool, but life's still good.
Yeah, but it should have been you ought to think about this,
When did that happen?
When I got to my first ship, after I graduated from officer. And that's when...
What was your rank by then?
As an ensign.
Ensign is an 01?
01.
Okay, ensign's 01. Okay.
Yeah.
I know Army talk, but you got to have to walk the dog with me on this Navy talk.
Yeah, we're the only ones that do it right.
Well, okay, so I digress for a sec, but when I was a very small child, Shannon's heard this story, my grandpa gave me that doll. What was it called?
Troll doll.
Troll doll. Crazy hair from some port somewhere.
Okay.
And we were on the ship. It was moored in Houston. And I'm a little guy, and he's holding my hand, and in his other hand, he had this fat stogie, and he was a giant of a man. I was a little dude.
Yeah.
And as he's walking, people are moving out of the way. Chief. And I remember thinking, my grandpa's an Indian. I had no idea what that meant. So anyway, continue.
Oh, goodness. Oh, let me think where I was.
You were an ensign. You got your first ship. And
I went to my first ship. Now, when I got my orders from OCS, I had wanted to go, like I said, I was a strong swimmer, and I had wanted to go to be a Navy diver. And I thought this was my opportunity to do it. As a matter of fact, while I went through officer candidate school, on some of the weekends, I went and I took scuba diving lessons and got certified as a scuba diver, just so it would help me when I went to school. So I had orders in hand that were going to send me to diving school and then to a submarine rescue vessel in home ported in Hawaii.
So, hey, Tom, so at this point, the Navy is your career.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't sound to me like you're looking at an exit strategy. It looks like you're looking at progression.
I was ready to do 30.
Okay.
I was ready to sign the paper and say I'll do 30.
Okay.
At that point. 6 months later, I wasn't, but at that point. But one of my friends that was in my company in OCS, he got orders he was going to be a diver as well, and he got orders to a ship in San Diego, a submarine rescue vessel in San Diego. And his order said to report to the ship and then go to diving school and so on. And he asked me, sometimes you can swap orders. And he asked me if I'd swap orders with him because he was married and he said, I'd really love to take my wife to Hawaii, and that would be like a honeymoon for us and so on. And I said, oh, okay, no big deal, and I thought this won't be a problem at all. And we asked, if it was okay, could we swap those orders? And they said, sure, it's no problem at all. So we did, and he went over and I ran into him a couple years later, but I left and I went to this ASR submarine rescue vessel in San Diego, and when I went on. The captain of that ship, I won't mention his name because I don't want you to get sued if he's still alive. But he was an absolute tyrant. I mean,
I think we have freedom of speech, don't we?
Oh, we do have freedom of speech.
Okay.
But
what's he going to sue me for?
Well, no, but I mean,
I get my old hoax
slander.
It might be easier.
Anyway, he had worked his way up. He was a limited duty officer. Lieutenant commander. And
that is an 04?
Yep.
04, okay.
And he had been, he had gone up through chief and master chief, but he was pretty rowdy guy, pretty salty guy. He was a diver, and that's a pretty rowdy group.
Okay.
And so on. But he had, as a matter of fact, in his background, he had gone off on a Westpac deployment as a chief selectee, which means he had been selected but hadn't been able to put it on yet. He returned as a second class, as an E5. He was an E7 selectee, and he returned as an E5. And somehow he had still been able to get back up and turn some things around. And I think he intimidated a lot of people and things like that. Every junior officer that worked under him got out of the Navy. And to the best of my knowledge, I was the only one that ever came back in the Navy because I did have some broken service after that.
Okay.
After that, I went back. I stayed in the reserves and then took a recall back to active duty later.
Okay.
But anyway, so that's kind of what happened with that. But one night when I went on the ship and stuff like that, and I showed him gave him my orders and so on, and asked him about going to diving school, and he says, well, I'm not sending you to diving school. He said, I got enough divers. I'm not sending you. And I thought, well, how can you do that?
I'm a little confused. You're an officer. He's enlisted.
No, he was an officer. He was an 04.
Okay, that's right. When we got into the chief and the busted part, I forgot. My bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he was the captain of the ship and stuff like that. And he's the only one in the Navy that ever told me that I couldn't drink. Because one night over at the officers club in Ballast Point at the submarine base, and he turned around and he looked at me. He says, you shouldn't drink. He says, because you can't drink like normal people. And it was right before he hit me and knocked me backwards over a over a bar stool. And I was, whoa. And I left. But he's the only one. He was the only one that ever told me that I couldn't drink like normal people.
He's the captain of your ship.
And he was drunk at the time.
And he pawed you.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's old school, huh?
That's old school. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So were you offended when he said you couldn't drink like normal people?
Yeah. But I was drunk.
And he was
drunk. Yeah.
Okay. It takes a non-normal person to.
But he would do things like that. You know, I met my wife in San Diego, and she was a Navy brat, and her father was an LDO. He had been all the way up through the enlisted ranks.
We don't know what LDO means.
A limited duty officer.
That still confuses me. What does that mean? Limited duty officer.
It means that they're not unrestricted in the types of things that they can do.
Oh,
like this, like he was in communications, and so he would always have a job in communications. In mine, I was an unrestricted line officer, so I had a communications background, and I was a subspecialist in communications. But I could also do other things, and have other kinds of positions.
Okay.
I wasn't limited in the type of duty that I.
So now you met your wife.
Yeah, I met my wife. We got engaged, and this same captain when we got engaged, he told me, he says, you shouldn't get married. He says you'd be a lot better off. He says if you just got you a $20 hooker.
Did he hit you again?
No, he didn't hit me.
Okay.
No.
He didn't marry you.
But I told
right?
no,
Because he can marry.
No,
right?
no, he wouldn't. No.
But captains can marry people, right?
I guess they can if they're out in international. But we wouldn't have women on the ship for him to marry.
Good point.
So
you shouldn't get married, but you did get married.
Yeah, But I had told his executive officer, who was the second in command of that ship. In Navy customs and courtesies mean that if you're going to get married, you go and you ask the captain's permission to get married. So the XO told me, he says, you need to go ask his permission to get married. And I said, well, I'll ask. I said, but I'm getting married whether he says it's okay or not.
Well, good for you. You were willing to get pawed again.
But we had my wife. Her father and her parents had been, in the Navy, and they spent a lot of time out there in the San Diego and Southern California area, and so on. And so, some of their friends wanted to throw a couple shower for us up in Long Beach, and the captain decided he wanted to have a wardroom function the same night, and told us we better be there. I said, well, they've got this couple shower, and he chewed me out and all this kind of stuff. It was.
What did you do?
It was bad. We went to the couple shower and then got back down to his party. So we're driving back and forth between San Diego and so on. We get to his house a few minutes after his party started, and he says, I thought you were going to be up in Long Beach. I didn't know you were coming to my party.
This guy had some issues, didn't he?
Oh, he did. He did. His daughter brought her boyfriend to this party. It's the only party I ever went to at his house. And his boyfriend was, one of these long-haired hippie type
my kind of guy.
Kids. Yeah. And something happened. I mean, he got a few drinks. He got a little mouthy and so on. And he mouthed off to the captain.
Oh no!
They carried him out.
And what did his daughter do?
I don't know. She left with him.
Another one bites the dust.
Yeah, it was like, it was, and that's just the way that he was.
If you can't dish it, if you can't take it, don't dish it.
Yeah, there was a book, and I don't know if it's still in print, but it was titled The Arnheiter Affair. There was a Navy officer named Captain Marcus Aurelius Arnheiter, and he ended up
Did you say Marcus Aurelius?
Yeah.
His parents had high aspirations for stoicism.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was not a very good officer, but somehow he had gotten his name put on a list that he could be the commanding officer of a non-combatant ship if they couldn't find anybody else in the Navy.
Was that like a raft?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there were some destroyer escorts and things like that, and he ended up somehow being able. I don't know how he did it, but he had a friend that was a detailer or something, and somehow his name got slipped in, and he got command of this destroyer escort.
Okay.
So he goes over, and he was doing. I mean, he just did crazy stuff, just like what I've been describing with my captain and stuff. But he'd do even crazier stuff. He'd tow it. They got a small outboard engine boat, and they would tow that behind the DEA, and they'd go in near the gun line, near the shore, and they'd have that thing steer in close to the shore, hoping to draw enemy fire, so he could say that he could say he was fired upon, so he could fire back.
Oh.
He'd fire the movement report that he'd tell the Navy where the ship was and where it was going would not be in the same place where the ship was and where it was going. And he'd do that kind of, and he eventually got court-martialed for all of that. He lost his command. He got court-martialed. He almost got killed because there was one sailor that had enough and had a rifle and it just had it aimed right at his head and didn't pull the trigger.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah, but
so tell me about your love life and your drinking.
So, well, my wife's parents, both of them were alcoholics.
Oh, well, good for her.
Typical thing. So she was an adult child of an alcoholic. She didn't think that my drinking was any different than their drinking. She didn't know that was alcoholism, and so.
Those ACA people, huh?
I know. Are you an ACA?
I am.
My wife was an ACA, and then she became a black belt Al-Anon.
Your life flashed before her eyes.
Yes,
right?
it did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I used to tell her the Navy handshake was the finger, shaking up and down.
Yep. Okay, so what?
So anyway,
what rank are you at this point? Are you
on my honeymoon? I became a lieutenant junior grade in 02.
02. Okay, so you're married. She's not really a drinker. She's just a product of drinkers.
Well, she would drink,
but not like
I did. No.
Did she ever just like, hey Tom, we got to talk?
She did more than that.
Oh, well, do tell.
But not really at that time. Because she knew that it was she knew that tour of duty on that ship was it was really getting to me.
Okay.
And, I mean, I had been on there about a year. You see, I went on there in 1970. I got commissioned in 1972, in September of 72, and we got married in 1974. We met in February of 1974. So I'd been on there for a while, and then we met in February, and we got married in August of 1974.
Okay.
And I was due to get out at the end of in August of 1975.
Okay.
Actually,
You'd had enough. Now you're looking to get out.
Our first year of marriage, we were only together for maybe, I think we figured it was 2 months at the max.
Yeah, because you're on the ship.
Yeah, and we're out and did a deployment, did a 6-month deployment and all that kind of stuff. And
did you have kids in this?
No, not at that point. No.
I mean, did you eventually have children?
Yes.
So at what? Because you're progressing. I mean, you ended up retiring as a commander, right?
Right.
That's pretty high. Yeah, it's an 05, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot to say.
But I should have made 06. But we'll talk about that later.
Okay, so I'm still curious about when you derailed. Did you ever derail, or did you just have a wake-up call?
No. I derailed, but I'm still doing okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm showing up when I'm supposed to be there, and I'm trying to keep my nose clean as much as I can. Sure. I don't drink on duty. I don't drink on the ship. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. If the ship's in port and I'm not in the duty section, I'm in a bar.
Right.
Especially on deployment.
Right.
And stuff. But anyway, so we come back and I decide I'm getting, I get released from active duty, and we go back to Virginia. And I think that's when, at first we couldn't drink very much because I didn't have a job, and I'm working, working at a drugstore, stocking shelves, doing that kind of stuff, and so on, trying to find a job teaching. She's working at a drugstore, another different drugstore, stocking shelves and doing that kind of stuff. And but I'm drinking when I can, on the weekends and stuff like that. And we talked about it, about how much I was drinking and so on. But neither one of us understood anything about alcoholism. And at age 27, I think I went to my first AA meeting.
What sparked that?
Her desire for me to not drink so much, and my desire to not get hassled so much about my drinking. My desire to want to quit, or to want to be able to drink normally.
And AA was going to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, curve the appetite a bit.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know. I would have been happy. I would have been happy if I could have gone out at night, and have a beer or two beers.
So you said you'd be happy doing it. So what was your drinking like? I'm build us a picture.
My drinking was like, when I start, I'm going to drink until I've either run out of money, or passed out.
Just a couple of nights a month, or
no, every night. Every night.
So you guys are working at different drugstores. You have children at this point?
No, still didn't have children.
No kids. Okay, so you're free to drink, and she's a little annoyed, and so you're gonna go to AA and get a little curve.
Right.
Okay, what happened?
We'd been married for a year.
For a year.
At this point, we'd been married for a year. We were back in Virginia. I was 27 at that point. And we tried different things. I'd go a week during the week without drinking.
Time to celebrate.
Yeah, and she would time to reward you for not drinking. And she'd go to the grocery store and she'd bring back a 6-pack. Why can't you just drink one? But there's 6.
Right. That's an appetizer, by the way.
Yeah, but that's the way it was, and neither one of us understood anything about it. All this time, I thought, if somebody had a problem with drinking, it's a disciplinary problem. It is not. I had no idea that it was a disease.
Because you hadn't gotten any DWIs.
No,
you hadn't gotten any trouble.
No, I had gotten I had gotten one DUI. I got one in 1972 when I first went out to.
But in those days, they were just kind of like infractions, weren't they?
Yeah, well, it was in California. It was $500. You get an attorney, and either you're going to pay $500 to your attorney, or you're going to pay $500 to California. It didn't matter. It was going to cost you $500.
And it's like they just write it off though in 72, right? It was no big deal.
Well, no, they put me on. They said you're on probation. If you get another one in 5 years, then
Yeah, so but it was no mark. It's no big deal.
No, and it was expunged after 5 years.
That's right. Yeah, so it's like a diversion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to see where this is going. So you went. See,
that was before I had even met her.
Okay.
So she had never seen. And nothing like that had happened with her or anything. So, then I get it. I find a teaching job. I went to AA.
Okay, that's where we were.
This first
we were
thing.
AA.
Yeah. I go to one meeting a week for 3 weeks. She goes with me to support me, right? And I couldn't tell you what they said in those meetings. I couldn't tell you if there was anything. I was just there.
Were you sober when you went to them?
Yeah, I think I was.
Okay.
I don't remember much about them at all. I can't remember any of that kind of stuff.
I can't remember 1972.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they say if you don't remember the 60s, you weren't there.
That's right. That's right. If you do remember,
you weren't there.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So when did things get?
Okay. So
stuff get real.
Well, it kept progressing and stuff like that. We decided. I went for a walk with my father after that third meeting. Yeah, and we were talking, and my father said, "Son," he says, because I told him I was going to AA, and he says, "Son," he says, "let me ask you something." He says, when you drink, do you smoke more?" And I said, "Well, yeah. Anybody that that smokes. If you're drinking, you're going to smoke more. And he said, well, I think that might be your problem, son. He says, I think you could cut down on your smoking, then you wouldn't have a problem with drinking.
Well, there you have it.
And that's what I said. And I went back and I said, guess what, honey? I'm not an alcoholic. She says, oh, good. I said, we just got to cut back on our smoking. And she was a chain smoker. And I said, we just got to cut back on our smoking. I said, because she says, that's good. She says, I was always worried that when they went around that table and everybody said, my name is so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic, that you'd say, my name is Tom and I'm an alcoholic. And she says, I just don't know if I can handle that.
Oh.
So, we didn't want that, so, but neither one of us, I certainly didn't want to stop drinking completely. I just wanted to be able to handle it. But anyway, so I get a job, teaching at it was a day school for, special education. And
that would cause me to drink, just saying. That would cause me to drink.
Yeah, well, it comes to that. But it was somebody that lived in the same apartment complex that we were in, worked there. And she said, well, they're looking for a man and stuff like that. And you got a background in education and stuff like this. So I met with the director of the school. And, he said, well, he says, you've got a master's degree now in education. I had gotten my master's degree by this time. He says, you've got a master's degree in education. He says, but he says, we really need somebody that has a background in special education.
Oh, yeah.
He says, if you'll go to Virginia Commonwealth University there in Richmond, he says, if you'll go and work towards a master's in special ed, then I'll hire you, but I'm only going to pay you half of what I would pay somebody with the credential. Well, that was more than what I was making in the drugstore, yeah. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. So I still had GI Bill, and I used GI Bill to go and so I was doing that. But because I was the only male in the school, I got a class of learning disabled and behavior disordered boys that ranged in age from 8 to 16.
Oh, boy.
And usually I had 7 or 8 of them in the class, 9 of them in the class at any one time. And it was a war zone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have friends that are, and listen, you got to be wired to be a special education individual because those people are gifted. I was a teacher for a couple of years. Yeah. There's no way I could do what my peers did that were in that field. God bless them.
And I was supposed to have, I learned in my master's degree classes that I was supposed to have an aide.
That's right.
In my class. I had no aide in my class. It was all me. And I'd watch, I'd pay attention. I'm taking good notes in the special education, all the different courses that you take with that and so on. And we get into behavior modification. And we see all these wonderful things where the M&Ms and Johnny raises his hand and gets an M&M and so on and so forth.
It.
I come to school with M&Ms and they told me where I could put those M&Ms.
Yeah. Wow. So what was your nighttime like leaving there?
Oh, just wash the day away.
So were you still going to AA?
Oh, no. I went those 3 weeks.
Oh, that's it.
I didn't go back to AA again until 8 years later.
And what happened in that 8 years that finally brought you to, boom, the program?
2 children, back in the Navy, another deployment, fights, back my first command. I was by that time I was a lieutenant commander, so another promotion, which on those promotions you throw a wedding down party.
I know.
And I was at the time I was a department head on an LPH, amphibious assault ship. It's like looks like a small aircraft carrier, and which is what I went across. We were talking about becoming a shellback earlier, and that's what I became a shellback on, and so on as a lieutenant commander.
So you had said when I asked you what happened those 8 years, you threw a term in there, fighting. Were you a scrapper?
No. With family fights.
Oh yeah, those fights. Yeah.
Family fights. No, not
Those kind of fights cause you to drink. Scrapping is because you are drinking.
I would, yeah, but I would stay away from any of that kind of stuff. Again, protect the source.
Yeah.
If I got in a fight,
Especially as a senior officer.
my Navy career is over.
Right.
My income is gone. I have no benefits from the Navy because I didn't complete a career. And I'm right back where I was, I'm right back where I was stocking shelves at a grocery store.
Forget about that. Okay, so here you are, commander, 2 kids, a wife.
Yeah, I'm the commanding officer of the Navy and Marine Corps Reserve Center in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. And I thought, okay, everything's going to be different now. Each time I got promoted or a different command, I'd gone through armed forces. Well, no, at that time I hadn't. But each time I got promoted or something, I thought, well, okay, it's going to be different now. I won't need to drink. It won't be as bad. It won't, it's all going to, but as different as it was, it never changed anything, because it was me.
So wherever you went, Tom went with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wherever I go, whoop, there I am. and so my wife had told me, she said, honey, I think I want you to leave. She said, matter of fact, she says, I've met somebody I think I'd rather spend my life with. And I was crushed, and I didn't know I didn't know what else to do, And I had tried to stop drinking. I had made, this was in 1983. I had quit drinking on New Year's Day, and I hadn't had a drink until February the 4th. It's the longest I had been sober on my own, being able to do that. But my son got my oldest. So by this time we had 2 children. One of them was 3, and the other one was 2. And one was 3.5, and the other was 2. They were 15 months apart. And he'd been playing with his toys early in the evening, about 6:30 in the evening, and he had started running a fever. And by 9 o'clock, he was comatose. He had a fever about 106. I swept him up in my arms, put him in our van, and drove him to the hospital. And the doctors started working on him, trying to figure out what was wrong, and so on. About 4 o'clock in the morning, my wife and I are sitting on one side of a table, and the doctor's across from us. And he says, Mr. Crawford, he says, we think your son might have spinal meningitis. We think it's a bacterial kind. He says, with this disease, he says, the symptoms follow the disease because the disease moves so fast, so rapidly. So we've hit him with about 1 million units of penicillin. If there's somebody you need to call, we suggest you call him. It'll take a couple hours before we'll know whether he's going to live or die. We just don't know. And it was like, holy smoke, And so we went out to the lobby and called my parents, let them know what was going on. Called her sister because her parents were deceased by that time. And somebody said, why don't you call your pastor? And I audibly heard a door slam in the back of my head. And I no, I don't want any pastors. And I don't want anything to do with a God that would do that to my son. I said, if he's mad at me and he wants to punish me, let him do me. But not that little boy. That was the low point in my drink. That was the point that 4 days later got me back to AA. But I left that hospital. I had to take responsibility for the 2-year-old because my wife was going to stay at the hospital with her little boy. And I don't remember whether I went and got beer first or whether I went and got a bottle first. But it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I do have vague. I had been a blackout drinker for some time, but I had vague recollection of driving my van around in South Carolina with my 2-year-old son sitting in my lap, and I'm like 3 sheets to the wind, and so on. My mother got on a bus in Richmond and rode a bus all the way out to Greenville, South Carolina, which was a bunch of hours and stuff. I was passed out on the couch. I was too drunk to even go pick her up at the bus stop. And that's when all the hatred I had towards myself just kind of came out. During that 4 days, somehow I had punched something and broken my knuckle, and I wouldn't go to the doctor to get it fixed or anything. that was just a mess. That was the bottom. And I went to and found out where an AA meeting was, and I went to it. I didn't, I couldn't go to treatment center because I was afraid that the Navy, would be on my way out, especially because there's many of the officers that I had heard talk about it as being a discipline problem, not a disease or anything. And so I was absolutely crushed. And here my wife was asking me to leave. And after that, she told me I didn't stay sober when I went there. I went to the meetings. I can't remember how many meetings I went to, but I remember about 30 days later, I realized I was drinking, and I don't remember when I started drinking again or anything else. I immediately, as soon as I realized that's what I was doing, I went back to AA again, and probably went another 30 days or so. I didn't take my last drink until June the 8th of that year. But in this first 5 months, it was a couple slips that were in there and stuff like that, which was at that time was when she announced that she wanted me to leave, that she wanted to have somebody else, that she felt like she had met somebody that she wanted to find out if that was somebody she felt like she could spend her life with. Now, we never did. We got back together and had a happy ending. But it was funny that guy was the one that suggested that she go to Al-Anon. And that guy also, she found out had a cocaine problem. So, and I know you could laugh at that because it's so true that Al-Anons get attracted to that type of person, because they're comfortable with that type of person, And I've met Al-Anons that married somebody that they never even knew ever took a drink, and they turned out to be an alcoholic. And,
Bob's my number 3.
Yep.
So, but anyway, after June the 8th, she had told me she wanted me to leave after that we were having a commanding officers conference in Charleston, South Carolina, which is where my immediate superior in command was.
Did she have the kids by then? Or were you guys still together?
We were still together then.
Okay.
And your son was okay.
Yeah, my son. I'm sorry. Sometimes I forget to.
Forget that was an important part. I'm just hanging on the edge here, waiting.
Yeah, well, because I'm thinking about telling this part of the story,
right?
And yeah, he came through it. I say he was fine. There've been some ramifications, I think, from it. Mm-hmm. He ended up with a pretty white stripe down his head, the center of his head, that almost looked like a skunk at times, because they think, because of the high temperature that he ran and stuff like that. And we had some problems with him, behavior problems and so on. He became one of us for a while. And he's still iffy. He doesn't go to AA anymore but he's not drinking, but he is using some medical stuff that's available.
So June 8th of what year?
June 8th of 1983.
And that was it for you?
And that was it.
Okay, so and when did you get out of the Navy?
Oh.
Retire.
1995.
So math is not my strong point. 12 years later.
Yeah.
You retire. You're commander.
Right.
You got a wife. You got two kids.
3 kids now.
You got 3 kids. Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you do after that?
Well, when I retired,
I'm just curious. How did you end up becoming a pastor? How did you go from I heard that door slam in the back of my head, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
Don't want anything to do with God.
I found God, and I found a relationship with God.
Okay.
In AA.
Okay.
In Greenville, South Carolina.
All right.
Now, I had grown up. I was Catholic, and then when I went in the Navy and I started drinking and stuff like that, then I don't know. I thought it was ridiculous to train to kill people 7 days or 6 days a week and then go to church on the 7th and so on. And at one point, even on that first ship that I had, I was both the Catholic and the Protestant lay leader.
Oh.
At the same time, because it was a small ship, we only had a crew of 100, and and I was the only one willing to do it. But I just, at that point, when I hit bottom, I couldn't see God active in this world at all, And they talked about, a spiritual relationship with God, and I couldn't understand how you have a relationship with someone you can't see, you can't talk to, you can't, there's nothing physical there, and so on. But my sponsor had me going to, I was going to meetings every day, but one of them that I would go to and that with my wife a lot of times was an 11th step meeting on a Sunday morning.
Oh, well, good time to have an 11th step meeting.
Yeah.
And just for the listening audience that may not understand, 11th step is about...
It's to seek to improve our conscious contact with God, seeking through prayer and meditation, asking for knowledge of His will for us.
So having that meeting on Sunday morning was kind of perfect.
Yes, it was.
Okay, I'm curious. So how did you built that spiritual relationship, and then did you just your affiliation with the program, did it lead you to want to do more in the field of historialship, or how did you get there? That's a big leap.
Yeah. Well, but it's a progression. It's not, it's appendix 2. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly.
Yeah.
But it didn't come in great leaps. It just came very slowly. My sponsor got me into service.
Yep. Service work.
Yeah, not the service.
Right.
I'm done with that.
You're done with the service.
Yeah. Okay. But I got, I guess I worked with corrections and stuff like that, and then in sponsorship and leading other people through. But one of the things I did the third, I had a hard time doing the 4th step.
Now, 4th step is...
The 4th step is to do a fearless moral inventory.
Okay.
Fearless and thorough moral inventory.
Right. Again, that was for the audience.
Yes.
Some folks are listening to this and they don't have a clue what we're talking about.
Right. Well, I had a hard time doing that because I hadn't thoroughly done the 3rd step, turning my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand.
I can identify with that. Yep.
And I didn't know how to do that. I mean, I'd gone through it. I'd read the words of the prayer that they have in the big book and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't grasp this relationship with that. So my sponsor and I held hands, got down on our knees, and once again, we went through that prayer very slowly. And he looked at me and he said, "Tom," he said, "did you mean what you said?" Now that prayer goes, God, I offer myself to thee to do with me and build with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I might better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them would bear witness to those that I could help, of thy will and thy love and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. And he asked me, he said, "Did you really mean that?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, No. Did you mean that from the very bottom of your core of being? And I thought for a minute, and I said, "Yeah, I really did. I'm willing. I want all that stuff to be turned over, and I just don't know how to find out what His will is for me." And he said, "Well," he said, "if you really meant that," he said, "then whatever happens the rest of your life is none of your business. He said, your business is to suit up and show up each day and seek God's will. And He'll find a way to let you know what His will is. And it may be in different ways. It may be by people that you meet. It may be by things that happen in your life. He'll let you know. It'll be things you read, things you hear. You'll know when God's talking to you. It'll just guide you and stuff like that. So I started doing things with service and stuff like that. And we ended up, I finished up my Navy career. I retired from the Navy in Orlando. Took a job with ITT Educational Services. Found out that I was good with working with college-age folks and stuff like that. Ended up going down to Fort Lauderdale with them as the director of education down there. After being down there for about 6 years, I got picked up as the director of the ITT Technical Institute here in Little Rock. It was over on, University Avenue, and I ran that. When we came up to Little Rock, I got to come and find the house, and we moved into Otter Creek, and it was just the ideal setting because they've got. I could walk to the swimming pool and the tennis courts. In the other direction, I could walk to our church. It was a Methodist church there, and by that time we were Methodists, and we liked working with the Methodists, with the kids, and we'd been going to Methodist church, once I got sober, and so I got involved with the church as well as with the school, and I was doing some things with the church in classes and things like that the lay servant ministries and stuff. And just one thing just added to another. I ended up becoming the district director for lay servant ministries with the church or with the Arkansas Conference, the central district of the Arkansas Conference, and so on. And then I got to thinking about it and thought, well, I wonder. They have this thing of a licensed local pastor, so you don't have to go through school to seminary.
Yeah.
You can go through a course of study and do some things with that, but you can go through a licensing school and so on, but you have to enter into what they call candidacy and stuff like that. So I started into this candidacy, and you had to write a whole bunch of stuff that you had to write out about what you felt like your gifts and your talents were, and all these things, and why you wanted to go into ministry, and you had to meet and do these interviews and things like that, and eventually the district superintendent came up to me one day, turned around and says, "Tom," he says, "you ready for an appointment?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess I am." And he said, "Well, I got one for you." So he pointed me at Traskwood. And
how long you been out there?
Well, I was out there from I got appointed in 2014, and then I decided to retire in 2020. So I retired because I figured if I was an ordained pastor, they were required to retire at 72, and I hit 72 in 2020, and so I thought, well, that's a good time for me to step down. Well, the fellow that came in behind me came down with stomach cancer.
Oh no!
And he passed away, and I had still maintained a little bit of contact with the folks because I'd along with being pastor there, I had been working with with the Arkansas Health Center in Haskell. It's they have patients that have brain injuries and things like that are immobile and have difficulties and so on. Friday afternoons, another fellow and I go out there and we sing gospel songs from the old Heavenly Highway hymnals and stuff like that, and I carry about a little sermonette that I'll give out there to them. So we were doing that. So I kept doing that, but that kept me in contact with some of the folks from Traskwood. And when this fellow got sick and he could no longer pastor, I said, well, I'll come back and do that. So I've been doing that now since then, and I'll retire again this June and see if I can stay retired.
Well, my mom says we don't retire, we refire.
Yeah.
So even though you're retired from the Navy, you're retired from the IT world too now.
Yeah.
Okay. But we met because you also have other types of outreach that you're engaged with.
Right.
And how did you get involved with some of that stuff?
Well, that's the service work with AA.
Okay.
And like I said, when I first came in, I worked with corrections and the jails and the prisons and stuff like that with that outreach from AA. That was the first few years that I was in AA that I did that. But then when we settled in up here, then I've done different things as far as representing the group as a general service representative and stuff like that. But now I'm on the group's representative to the treatment center committee.
Okay.
And that's where we met, because that committee, when the treatment centers will go to that committee and ask, say, we'd like to have an AA member come out and tell their story, or do a presentation here, or at different ways. And so there's two different ways they do that. Sometimes they get a group will take it every month. A different group each month will take a meeting out to a place, and we do that with our group. Like every other month, we'll pick up one of those places to take, one of those treatment centers to take meetings to once a week. But then there's another way where one individual will turn around and take for a month or 2 months or 3 months to find speakers to come in each week to a particular. So they don't necessarily come from the same group. They would come from various groups, and it gives more of a flavor. And that's how
you got a lot of hats.
We met.
I'm thinking Commander Tom, Pastor Tom, Outreach Tom. Hey, what was that song?
David.
Yeah, what was that?
Ground
Major Tom.
Major Tom. Yeah. Oh, but you were Commander Tom.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do you do all this? I mean, you go play tennis every Monday. You could be doing it every day. Why do you have to do this outreach stuff?
Well, because it keeps me sober. And because I don't feel that my sobriety was anything that I did. I feel that my sobriety was something that was given to me. You know, if it was all left up to me, I would have been dead by now, a long time ago. As a matter of fact, when you asked about how bad the drinking got and the things like that, I was coming back from a recruiting trip. For a period of time, I worked back at my old college as an admissions recruiter, stuff like that. And I was coming back after a week on the road doing college night fairs and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm coming back through Tennessee, and I'd been drinking all the way back, and in a college car, and I passed out behind the wheel. I opened my eyes to see flashing lights and hear sirens and stuff like that, and realized that I had a guardrail wrapped around my car, or that car that I was driving. I was the only one in the car. I was not wearing a seatbelt. I had a little bump on my head. I had broken the windshield on the passenger side, and evidently it fallen back where I was, or whatever. I don't know, but I don't know for sure that I broke that windshield. But I got that bump on my head, and I couldn't figure out where else did it come from. But I hadn't hit another car. I hadn't injured any. I mean, it was like God took that car and He just put it over there, And I look at that and I think, God saved me for some reason. God got me sober for some reason. I couldn't do it. That first step, I'm powerless over alcohol. My life's unmanageable. It's as unmanageable. If I take control of my life today, because I never set out, as I've gone through my story, everything that I tried to do in my life, I was always trying to succeed, to better myself, and to be more successful. But if I'm running it, I'm making the wrong decisions and doing the wrong thing every time because I'm trying to please me. So my sobriety was a gift, and I feel responsible to give that back. When I needed to reach out to a place and didn't know where to reach, the hand of AA was there, and I need to make sure that hand's there for the next person that comes along to reach. Somebody was there for my son when he reached out. I was in a different state. We weren't living together at that point when he reached out. He was still up here, and we were back down in Florida for a while. But AA was there for him.
So you came in the program. Mm-hmm. The program was there for you.
Yes.
And time goes on. You're restored with your wife.
Yes.
Your kids.
Yes.
And awesome. Now you're giving back. Do you have an epiphany of, wow, this is what I need to be doing? Do you have a memory of when you were actually there? You just said people were there for you. They were there for your son. Do you have a memory of when you were there for somebody without giving up their anonymity, but when you were there for somebody, you're like, yeah, this is where I need to be. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I can. The most recent one was about 11 years ago. The most outstanding recent one.
Sure.
Was about 11 years ago when a fella came. It was about my age that came into the meeting, and he had just gotten out of treatment. He couldn't even put two sentences together, and just kind of befriended him and so on, but just always tried to be welcoming to him and so on. And he ended up asking me to sponsor him, and I took him through the steps and so on. And now he in 11 years, I mean, he does all sorts of stuff. He's my greatest achievement. I can't say my achievement as a sponsor, but he's the sponsee that I think that I've worked with that has really done the most. And I've got grand sponsees under him that are just unbelievable, and I just say, that's just what it's all about.
That's right.
And I've sponsored, but see, when I was in the Navy and when I was moving around and stuff, I would have sponsees and stuff, but then I would have to leave them when I got orders to change to somebody else. And so I've got a bunch of them all over the place. I don't know how many of them are still sober or not still sober. And I guess I'm terrible at trying to keep in touch with too many people.
Who does that? Yeah, we're guys. Guys don't do that.
Yeah.
Shannon's been keeping in touch with the same group of girls she grew up with forever. It just impresses me. Yeah. A guy said to me yesterday, usually I ask you, would you be my sponsor?
Yeah.
Guy said to me yesterday, oh, by the way, you're my sponsor. I was like, oh, yeah, well, thanks for letting me know, pal. Okay. Let's.
He asked me, he says, would you be my sponsor? And I said, I tell you what, you need to go home and pray about that.
That's right. That's right. That's
and
a
I
good
said,
answer.
and I'll do the same thing. And if you come back next week and you still feel that way, then yeah.
Tom, let's we've got an audience out there that's going to be or is listening to the show right now. So
they're probably asleep by now.
Well, that's where we add some things in the editing portion. So in fact, I'll edit that out. So two types of people are listening to the show. Okay. When is the age when it's like, don't even try coming in AA? You're too old for that. Just go out there and drink yourself to death. So is there an age cutoff to come into this program?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I've seen people come into this program in their late 60s. And Mike was in his 60s when he came in. And so, yeah, there's no cutoff time. There's a lot of people come in, if they come in later in life, they wish they'd come in sooner. I wish I had come in when I was 27 and I went to that first AA meeting. I wish something had hit me, but it didn't. It wasn't my time. I wasn't ready. Right.
So we got folks that are listening to the show, and they've got loved ones that are afflicted by addiction, alcohol, drugs. Drugs is the big thing today. When you and I back in the day, alcohol was kind of the thing. I had drugs out there, but boy, we've seen a lot of it. So regarding addiction in its general form,
right?
What would you say to people that have loved ones or acquaintances or employers that are just like, what do I do? What would you say to them?
Well, I would recommend Al-Anon, for them, and then if they can sit down and talk to them calmly and reasonably about what their problem and make a recommendation that they go to AA or NA or whatever the maybe Gamblers Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous or whatever the addiction may be. They all work those 12 steps and so on. If they can sit down and calmly suggest that to them, sometimes it's just planting a seed and not nag, not hassle them about it. Sometimes if they're going to Al-Anon or if they happen if they go to AA, they could leave some literature, just happen to leave some literature laying around, maybe a a Grapevine magazine happens to be left in the bathroom.
Hey, they're all seeds, right?
Yeah, and that's it. But I don't think you can't be forced into this program. You have to want it. Now you can. It's like you can't lead a horse. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But you can put some salt in their oats to make them thirsty.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's good.
And it's the same. It's the same type of thing. You know, there's people. I used to wonder why judges would send people. You know, you got to go to AA. You got to go to so many meetings and stuff like that. Well, you can go there if you're not listening, if you don't care, if you're not going to get anything out of it. But every once in a while, somebody that the judge sends will sit there and say, well, while I'm here, I ought to at least listen and pay attention to what they're saying and see if it does apply to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen people that have gotten sober that way, but it doesn't mean it's going to work, you know, for everybody. And you can't push them. And I, even when my son was having a problem with it, you know, and he had problems with alcohol and drugs. My oldest did. Well, actually, all three of my sons have been through some of that. Oh, you know, and my middle son, I don't think he ever had a problem drinking. I mean, he had some problems sometimes with some drugs or whatever as he was a teenager, you know, and so on, especially down there in Florida. But whenever it came time for him to take a drink, he just didn't like the feeling that it gave him, and he didn't like being not in control. And so he doesn't do drugs or anything now. But the others did, and I can't. I'm too close to them. I can't. I couldn't sponsor them. I couldn't do the 12-step with them and get them, you know, try to reach out, take them to meetings. I did. I carried them around if they were court ordered, you know. But you know.
So Tom, we got folks out there that could be listening to the show that are still active in their addiction, and what would you say to them? When I say they're listening, maybe they're listening because they're looking for help.
Right. What
would you say to them?
Well, if you don't have to live that way, there is help. There is hope. You know that there's a way living. So I found that living sober is so much better, so much more exciting, so much more challenging living sober than it was when I was drinking. You know, when I was drinking, then it seemed like everything just focused around the drinking. You know, my day would go, when can I get that first drink? When can I get that next drink? And I didn't get into the drugs primarily because of the Navy and the security clearance thing. Sure. You know, I could get away with drinking, you know, but drugs, you know, they didn't test you for alcohol content. They tested you for what THC and all those kinds of things. But anyway, I would say that was where my focus was, and life wasn't fun. I mean, if I didn't feel free to go anywhere or do anything because that desire to have a drink was always there. I didn't want to go to a party if they weren't going to have booze. Didn't want to go to a restaurant if they didn't serve booze or anything. You know, I didn't want to go out. Didn't want to spend time in a movie theater, you know, or a play or anything like that because I was going to want to drink and I couldn't have it there. You know, all I could do was go to places and do things. And life was, I hated life and I hated me, you know. But when I got sober, once I put the, as they say, put the plug in the jug, once I got sober and I found out, you know, the book, the Alcoholics Anonymous book says that, you know, we're not a glum lot. It says we absolutely insist on enjoying life, you know. And I learned early on, I used to hear these old timers say, you know, if being sober wasn't better than drinking, then I'd still be drinking. I'd go right back to it, you know. And I've heard people say that you know, no matter how long I go without taking the drink, if I want to have my misery back, I can get it all back in the shot glass. You know, it'll all come right back. and I haven't lost anything.
That's part of my story. Someday I'll share that with you. That line you used. Okay, so what's your favorite quote? One that you probably use so much it's just a Tom cliche at this.
Oh, no, I don't think I have. I really don't think I have a favorite quote.
Name one you like.
Use. Oh gosh, I like the slogans, and I like I think probably my favorite quote is "I can't, but God can."
Okay. All right, so we got folks that are in the program. They're just trying to build their toolbox. They got a bunch of tools in it already. What are some tools that you recommend? I'm talking about people that are maybe new in the program. They get it. They understand, hey, I need to work this recovery program. What's a nugget, a tool, a pearl, or something you would suggest to them to throw in your tool? Something that helps you?
Oh, certainly the Serenity Prayer.
Okay.
I wore that thing out the first 5, 6, 10 years, just over and over and over again with that, because there's so many things I'm just like I said, I'm powerless over alcohol. I have to let God take it. I can't. I know where my thing is. Whenever I had a desire to drink, one of the tools that I used is my sponsor taught me to just think beyond the first drink. I can visualize. We've had hot weather here, and you come in out of working in the yard, and you're hot and you're sweaty, and I can, if the TV's on, and I'll see that icy train come around the mountain, the Coors written on the side of it, and all these guys in the bar are having such a good time, and the door pops open and there's a guy covered in ice hands them these cold beers. And so I think, boy, that would really taste good right now, But my sponsor taught me to think through it. Well, the first one might taste real good. Maybe even the second one, because the first one's not going to do it. You're going to have a second one. If you have a second one, now you're getting started. Okay, we're not going to stop at 2. Maybe I need to get a 6-pack. If I get a 6-pack, the 6-pack is not. I got to go get 2 6-packs. If we're going to buy 2, I might as well go ahead and I'll get a case. So if I get a case, but I can't go in the house with a case, then the fights will start. Well, maybe I could hide a 6-pack in the garage. Maybe I could put another one back around in the shade back in the back of the house, and I could switch them out, from time to time. And now I'm back right to my same alcoholic thinking. I think maybe I'll get a glass of tea.
That other was a lot of work.
It was. It is a lot of work.
It is.
It's a lot of work to stay high.
Oh, it is.
Gosh.
It's harder to keep drinking and get away with it than it ever is to stay sober.
Oh, I think about back in our early days, trying to time my drinking out. Telling Shannon, "Oh, it's a commercial break. I gotta go to the bathroom. Please, commercial. Come on, commercial. When's the commercial coming?" Just all the manipulation, all the work that goes into it. Forget about it. It's a lot easier. Listen, getting sober is not easy. I'm going to give you that. That's a rough monkey. But staying sober is not that difficult if we do things like what you just said. Think it through. You mentioned earlier in the show, deal with a sponsor. Yeah. There's other tools that are out there. We don't, and you said it in the beginning of the show, you don't have to do this thing alone.
Yeah.
No.
Well, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women. That's one of the things that my sponsor, because when I first got sober, when I first started trying to stay sober, I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to work, I'd go to a meeting at lunch, I'd go back to work, I'd go to a meeting after that, and for 10 days, my wife had me out of the house when we were first doing this, and so I'd go back to that reserve center that was 45,000 square feet, that was empty. I'd sit there with my big book and I'd read. I'd sleep on my couch. I had a very short commute the next morning to work. But that's what I was doing at the very beginning, and then after that, those 10 days, then I would go when I got back in the house, and I would go to work. I'd go home. I'd hibernate. I didn't want to go out. I didn't trust myself. Weekends, I didn't want to go out. I'd stay around, do your hour work, but I didn't want to go out anywhere because I didn't trust myself and so on. And finally, my sponsor sat me down one day and he said, Tom, he says, I want you to know, it says Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women. Doesn't it say it's a meeting of men and women? It's a fellowship. We're in this together. He says, you got to learn to get up, because if you don't begin to develop friends and do things, and stuff, if you keep hiding, you can't hide for the rest of your life. Because then you're going to end up drinking again. Because life's going to be miserable. He says, you got to. So he says, we're going to have a party at my house next week. He says, I want you and your wife to be there. And we started with that, and then he says, well, they got this Easy Does It golf tournament coming, and you don't have to be a good golfer. You just got to go out there and just swing clubs, and just have fun. Well, I liked the game of golf, and so I went and I did that with him and started getting involved with other things, and we have those here in the Little Rock area. Certainly, there is a group that does. I think it's with not Archipel, but it might be Archipel, but the thing of young people in Alcoholics Anonymous that has once a month has a little golf tournament that they play, and they're raising money for some of the things that they do as a group. But even that group is something they do lots of different things. We've had people from our group that got involved playing kickball and got in the kickball league, and there's all sorts of different things that different groups tend to do, because you find people that are in your home group that have same interests as you do. I mean, there's some that do bowling and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of activities that you can do but we do them as a group. My recommendation is that when you go to do something, like if you're going bowling or if you're be your own transportation, if you're going to a party where there's going to be alcohol served, be your own transportation. That way, if you feel antsy, you're not dependent upon somebody else to be ready to leave to get out of there. You can get in your car and you can get back home.
Yeah.
That was
evaluate first if you even need to go there.
Yeah. But there's lots of times when there's things with business and stuff like that you need to make an appearance, because people expect that, and if you don't, they don't know that you're not doing it because you're afraid you might get, you're afraid of drinking. They just think you're being antisocial.
Sure.
So you want to be social, but you want to be able to get out, if you feel like you need to. And
I love that you let people know that there is life after, and that you can still be part of the greater community and still do other things.
You can.
I mean, there's a time when maybe it's not real safe for you at the beginning, but as you get stronger, in your program, it does get to the point where you can certainly socialize. You can go to weddings, you can go to parties, you can go to a comedy club, you can do certain things. And
you can go to football games. You can do all sorts. I mean, and you can go to tailgate things and stuff. We don't recoil from alcohol. We just somewhere early on in my mind, I got to thinking about alcohol like it was Clorox. And I know I wouldn't take a bottle of Clorox and drink it. Right? And I think that alcohol is doing the same thing. Alcohol wants to kill me.
Yeah.
And they say, for an alcoholic to continue to drink, one of three things is going to happen. They're going to get locked up or sobered up or covered up. And the scariest of those, I wasn't scared about getting covered up or dying. I wasn't scared about really getting locked up, except in my own mind. And I had an uncle that became a wet brain.
Oh.
And I just that would be the scariest thing in the world to me, to have some mental capacities, but be locked up in my own head. Wow. But I always thought door number 3, sobered up, it was the way to go. And and you can do anything. I found that I've been able to go back and do lots of things that I had never that I had kind of given up on earlier in life and stuff like that. When I got sober, depending upon circumstances of life and where you are and so on. Now, I've been sober for a lot of years now, but I've gone back. Started doing some running and trying to get back in shape and stuff like that. I've done triathlons that I never would have done. Played a lot of tennis that I wouldn't have done if I was still drinking. No way I'd have gotten out and done those types of things. A lot of swimming and stuff. Gosh, there's just so many things that we can get back into. I found that I thought, well, how am I going to watch a football game if I can't drink? And then I realized that I really didn't like watching football games all that much. So I'll watch college games and stuff, but I think it's been a couple of years since I've watched an NFL game, the whole thing, because there's other things I'd rather do.
I gotta hand it to you. I see people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are just physically broke. They're broke. You're 75 years old. You play tennis.
Yeah.
You give hope to Shannon.
And he looks great.
He looks great.
Yeah.
I always told Shannon, I said, you know what? My term life insurance ends, about a decade. It's going to be time to check out because, I'm going to be old and broke. And then you come in and you look great 75. You give me hope. I'm telling you. Hey, so let's.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What happened with the smoking? Do you still smoke?
No, I quit after 50 years.
You quit after 50 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I was curious.
My wife passed away in 2013
Oh, I'm sorry.
of lung cancer.
Oh.
Okay.
And like I said, she's like a chain smoker, and so the next month after she passed, because I had tried to quit smoking, we had both tried to quit smoking. I did Shantex 3 times. I did hypnosis. I did acupuncture. I put patches on and still smoked with patches on. I did everything I could to quit smoking and just couldn't stay off of it. I made 19 days one time on Shantex, but you can't. It's hard to live with somebody that's smoking, and because you really can't. I mean, I think it's even tougher than living with somebody that's drinking, because you get the secondhand smoke. You get so the craving sits in whether you're taking it intentionally or not, whatever. But anyway, so then the month after she passed away, my kids, one of them started vaping or something, and I thought, well, I could do that, because that would still give me the same sense of. So I got one of those e-cigarettes, and then I got one of those vape things where you could put your own amount in, and so on. So I started off with like 6 milligrams or whatever it is that you have. Then the next I could get it. The next lower was 3, so I got that. And then they didn't have anything lower than that except 0. So I said, well, I can't do that. So I got a 0 and I got a 3, and I mixed them together, and it gave me a 1.5. And I step down. And so every once in a while, I'll still use that vape, but I haven't had nicotine in it for, gosh, I would say about 6 years, something like that.
Well, I wondered, since your dad said,
You're still smoking?
just to cut down on the cigarettes, whether or not that.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I tried that vaping
Well,
thing.
he was right. He was right. See, I've cut down on the smoking, and I no longer drink.
Right? I tried that vaping thing, and I'm going to tell you, it just takes too much work. All right, so I think I did the math while we were talking here. Do you have 40 years in recovery?
Yeah.
40 years. Let's sum this up in your parting words, maybe in one sentence if possible, to anybody listening. How did you get 40 years?
One day at a time. My sponsor told me early on, and it may not have been my sponsor, it may have been somebody else at the meeting, told me, he says, if you don't take a drink today, you'll never get drunk for the rest of your life.
That's great advice. Tom, speaking for Team BS here, that'd be Bob and Shannon. We're grateful for you. Thank you. You're an inspiration.
Oh,
You got a lot to offer, and I'm just so grateful that you're so engaged in the community with all the outreach stuff that you do. I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing because you give guys like us, man, a lot of hope. Thanks.
well, I think you give me a lot of hope with what you're doing. I love your podcast.
All right, brother. Well, that's all we got, and I'm just going to say this to the listening audience. God bless you. Have an outstanding recovery day, and remember, if nobody's told you today they love you, we love you. God
Yes,
bless
we do.
you, and come visit us again. Spread the word. Shout out from thepit.com. Bye.